And taking a leap forward again to comedy, you go to somewhere like the Edinburgh Festival and you see so many fringe artists in comedy. Who would you say, if you were going to buy a ticket to see somebody these days in comedy, who would you go and see?
I think there's quite a few that I like these days, although I think there was a bit of a trough a few years ago when it was just so seriously blue, you know, and very clubby. But what those people forget is that everything goes in cycles in entertainment, and none of it is any different to what I was doing and my contemporaries were doing years and years ago. The folk scene, going back to that, was massively trendy, particularly in colleges, you know, and the people that came from the folk scene, like Eric Clapton and Elvis Costello, David Bowie, and then in comedy there was Connolly, there was Mike Hardin, and there was you know, various people like that, and that was the hub of what was going on at the time. I think what happened a couple of years ago was that it was the same thing again with the Comedy Store. They were rattling them out like nobody's business, and they all thought using four-letter words was enough to be funny, which of course it ain't. You know, a lot of them have sort of learnt their trade since then, if you like, and of course it's the old funny adage that they come from alternatives to be mainstream, and now, you know, the people like the McIntyres and people on telly, they are the mainstream of comedy today. Sean Locke's and so on. I like Sean Locke. There's a guy called Stuart Lee who I like very, very much. Very dry, very deadpan, my sort of humour. But it's a far old cry from, I mean, I was brought up like a lot of people on, I don't know, my mum and dad watching Morecambe and Wise and Tommy Cooper and things. And it wasn't really till I got out really on the road and I supported Steve Martin that I learned what live comedy was all about, because Steve Martin was probably the shyest person I've ever met in my life, but he sort of exploded, you know, when he went on stage, and I learned so much from him, to the extent I remember coming home from America and having this naff American accent. That's how impressed I was with him. But he used to take the audience out in the street and show them how to nick a car, you know, and I just thought, wow, this is a bit different, a bit quirky compared to Eric Morecambe. And so risque comedy is not a new thing. It's not a new thing at all. And when I joined the BBC, which I did in whatever year it was, I'm not very good at years, by the way, I started writing with Griff Rhys-Jones, for Bernard Braden and stuff, and that was finger on the pulse comedy of its time, and did the same with Pebble Mill at One. I used to do a weekly song about the news, and that was as risque as I dare be at lunchtime television and things. But yeah, I think all those people are only following a trend that we've all done before. I'm sure in the music hall there was people 100 years before me that were doing exactly the same thing. The guys that survive are the guys that take a lot of the filth out. I mean, I'm not pure, you know. I mean, if I go down a pub, I'm with my mates, I'm like everybody else. But I think there is a time and a place. A lot of them have learnt that. Not the Frankie Boyles of the world, but there's others that have learnt to go into conversation humour. Sean Locke, I mentioned, is a classic example of that. Someone like Lee Evans, my kids love, and Lee Evans is just basically a modern day comedian of the old school, probably because of his dad, you know. And it's really funny because Lee Evans is a naturally funny person to look at. I personally would like to see him swear less. It seems the bigger gig he does, the more words he puts in. And someone should say to him, "You're so funny, you know, you're so brilliant. You don't need to." And that's what all the guys are learning. I mean, my girls, you know, when I watch the telly with my girls, they seem to be into all the Mock the Week stuff, you know, and that seems to be where comedy is going. Whether or not they're live acts or not, I'm not really sure. I don't see them, but the Live at the Apollo has opened up comedy, not in the way I would have known it though, you know. So I'm not always the best qualified to talk about it, you know.
And do your gigs change, or your act change from area to area, you know, from around the country?
No, they don't. No, it doesn't actually. It changes from year to year, because I think this tour I'm doing now is my 40th British tour, and so if you're churning out the same old junk every year, I think people eventually stop coming to see you. And I do believe that I've probably been around longer than I ever expected to be. I'm not talking about in life, hopefully, but I'm talking about on stage. And when I set out on my mission of being an entertainer, I never thought at 60 years old I'd still be knocking it out, but I'm very pleased I am. Smaller venues now, but that is because I don't really have a show busy type of ego. I'd rather do smaller places and feel at home and sell not the tickets that I used to, rather than you know, empty other theatres. But I plan a show, and that will take me through the year because of the guitar pieces as well. You know, it's not just stand up, obviously. And when the show's worked and new stuff's broken in, it more or less stays there till about Christmas time, and then I'll go back, do a couple of cruises, you know, work-wise I'm talking about, and then get back on the road in February or March. That's what normally happens, and that'll be another new show with the golden oldies left in that I want to hear, you know. But yeah, there'll always be 4, maybe 5 new pieces every single tour, and that will go around Britain. I don't think there is a north and a south really anymore, you know, like there used to be, but thank God. And that seems to work for me anyway.
And it seems pretty suited that today's National Poetry Day.
Is it?
Yeah, and you're sitting with a new book called My Poems.
I didn't know. Didn't have a clue. Or do you want me to read you one?
Yeah, that'd be great.
I've got a real small one here. I'm not very good at reading my own poems, but there was one. There was one about a pigeon. It was the smallest poem I'd ever written. Otherwise, all your people will log off and go, "Blimey, he was boring." There you are. 83 National Poem Day. Wow, I didn't know that.
T.S. Eliot was voted the favourite.
Was he?
Yeah.
Well, not me. Cool. What a come down, eh? Here he is. Some pigeons are made of wood. Some pigeons are made of clay. I just saw one that was neither of them because it cooed and it flew away. That's how rubbish you can write poems, really. Spike Milligan got away with it.